I'm Linda Beatty from Linda Beatty's Life Coaching and Counseling, and I am here with Val again today, and we are going to talk about hypervigilance. Now, hypervigilance is a normal human reaction to a perceived threat or a perceived thing that could possibly happen to harm you. So let's say you're crossing the street and a car comes out of nowhere and almost hits you and you have to jump out of the way. Now, how do you feel after an incident like that? Your heart is racing, you're probably sweating, you're probably anxious, you're probably up here at a level that you normally wouldn't be at. Well, imagine feeling like that many times throughout the day. Imagine feeling that on a regular basis and not being able to stop it, with no threat happening, with nothing going on particular, but that feeling comes up. Val, tell me some of the times it comes up for you when there's not a real threat that you can see coming at you.
Well, it just happened. I was driving, and I have had a car accident in the past where a deer jumped out of the woods and landed on the hood of my car, and the car was totaled and all that. So I don't think about it when I'm driving around normally, but when I'm on the highway, I'm aware of it, but nothing's actually happening. But I'm sort of feeling already hypersensitive and hyper aware. Then if someone does maybe slam on the brakes or cut into my lane or whatever, I get a massive reaction. I get, yes, the heart races, yes, I get shaky, but it lasts a long time. And then I have to wait for it to purge out of my system, and that takes a while. And I stay at that level, I would say, for probably like 20 or 30 minutes.
Okay. And that's a good example of a PTSD symptom, because the deer accident was your PTSD. So having that hypervigilance in that situation is normal.
Makes sense.
It makes absolute sense for that. Let's talk about it emotionally. What kind of relational situations put you in that frame of mind?
I would say, well, I have a fear of conflict. I have a massive fear of conflict. So I think I try to be a peacemaker at all times, but you can't always make peace at all times. So I start feeling that way when someone's kind of coming at me a bit, and they may be really coming at me, or they may not be coming at me, but it feels like they are. And then I am bracing myself for like verbal assault, which may not even be happening. It may not be happening, but my body reacts like, oh, it's going to happen. You better be ready. It's happening. And it's an overreaction, but I know the root of it is in trauma. But people are not always acting that way to me. I perceive that they are, or at least my body perceives that they are. So I have to emotionally talk myself down and away from that feeling. It's intense.
Right, and because of your childhood and because of the reactions you had to your parents when you were little, this is where this comes from, correct?
That's where it comes from, yeah.
And so what has changed, let's say, over the last couple of years that has made that better or worse?
Well, through therapy.
That's better, guys, by the way. I was too far down, and I just realized, but we're not going to stop the video because we're not perfectionists, and I don't want you to be either. So we're going to go from here. So go ahead.
I would say through therapy, learning to do, even as something is happening, even as it's happening, to do grounding techniques. And for me, I'm aware now that what happened in the past is not maybe currently happening, even though my body says, yes, it is, and my mind is saying, yes, it is. So to be able to kind of talk myself into the current to the present is probably the most important thing I do. I also do deep breathing, like in the middle of it happening. See, I I know that this one makes sense because it's a deer and all, but there was a time not that long ago when a deer did run into a road, another car hit it. And I relived my entire original trauma on that. Also backed by all the hypervigilance of my entire life. And I had a reaction so bad, I started screaming uncontrollably in the car. I was the passenger, not the driver. But I started screaming like it wasn't even me. It was like there was another person screaming. I totally left my present self. And I had to use I just had to go through all the things, the breathing, bring myself back to the present, open the window, let the wind blow in my face, talk out loud, the whole thing, cry it out. I had to do the whole thing. It's part of my makeup now. And it's something I have to deal with on a daily basis. Even just a startle is an overreaction for me.
Right. And so the hypervigilance can come from a traumatic event. It can come from childhood trauma. It can come from any kind of violent or traumatic incident. But the more layered trauma you have, like C-PTSD or layer upon layer of trauma, is the more the hypervigilance will be. And you do have C-PTSD, so yours is probably worse than most. Plus you had an adrenal problem, and that influences it as well. But I have C-PTSD, and I've been in my healing journey for quite a while, and I still have hypervigilance in certain situations. Like, let's say I'm going to talk to someone in authority, because my abuser was my dad, who was an authority, and he could be quite intimidating. And so when I go to speak to authority, there are times where I have to center myself. I will have to do my deep breathing. I will have to tell myself, this person is not above me. They are not over me. They are not in charge of me. I am on the same level with them. And I have to talk myself into believing that I deserve to be treated with dignity, respect, not talked down to, not disrespected, and just relax with it. Just talk to them like I'm talking to you right now. And it takes effort, because we have been either modeled or trained to react a certain way, especially if it was in childhood. That is the harder one to break, because it's kind of in our makeup. It's in our neurological system. It's in how our personalities developed. It's in so much of what we do. So you talked about some of the things that we do for hypervigilance: the deep breathing, the grounding. What else?
Sometimes I try to prepare myself in advance.
Mm-hmm.
Because, I have, for different reasons maybe, but I have some of the authority situations, some of it. I have the abandonment issues, which is like always speaking to me, I'm about to be abandoned, And what it makes me do is just be constantly startled. And I have to, I'm starting to speak for myself a little bit. She knows I do this, so she'll be like, I'm coming, and but there are people in my life who just say, oh, she's so sensitive, we have to tell her we're coming, and it makes me feel humiliated. I feel a little humiliated, but not as much now, because I know there's a reason I feel this way, and I'm not ashamed of it. It wasn't my fault. So what I'll do is I'll talk to myself ahead of time when I'm kind of going into a situation that I know there's potential there for it to be stoked. You can't prepare for what you don't know is coming, but when you do, I will do a little prep ahead of time. And I think there's a lot to be said for the self-care every day, just taking care of yourself every day and not letting that slide. Right. So that you have to kind of make up for, getting recentered.
Right. And back to that wound that people say, oh, you're oversensitive. Well, you know what? If you had broken your leg in 20 places and it had to be set and you could never walk right again, or you always walked with a limp or needed a cane or something, people would not react that way. They would have sympathy, they would have empathy. So with hypervigilance, it is a wound that you have that is making you react that way, whether it's PTSD or C-PTSD, whatever the incident is. So what I want you to get is you can talk yourself down before you get to that place. You can talk yourself through it when you're in that place. You can do things like deep breathing, grounding, staying in the present, all of the things that you need to do to calm yourself down when you're in it. And if someone thinks that you're jumpy or oversensitive, tell them to research it. Tell them to look at trauma injury. Tell them to really know what they're talking about before they make a comment like that, because that's a hurtful comment. So I am Linda Beatty from Linda Beatty's Life Coaching and Counseling. This is my pal Val, and we will see you next time. Find me on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and message me on Messenger. I will respond. Bye, guys.